Hello everyone, my name is Francesca Duval and I'm from Alchemist Farm in Northern California. We are a humane quail and chicken hatchery, and today I'm here to talk to you about quail. I've heard from a lot of chefs and folks online that 2019 is shaping up to be the year of the quail. So if you are interested in adding some to your small backyard or your large homestead, this could be a good time. And this video is going to be a great resource for you on what you need to get started with them. Let's talk about housing for the quail. What keeps a quail happy is a quail feeling safe. Quail are very different than chickens. In my mind, what a chicken wants is to be out free-ranging on pasture and having ample space, free in the sunshine and tons of grass. And that's not exactly what a quail wants. If you think about how you see quail in the wild, you might see them running across the road, but where they're actually hanging out is in brush and in low, dense areas underneath trees. Here in California, it's in a lot of blackberry bushes. If you have bushes like that of the sort where you live, then that's probably where they're hiding. They do that because predators know they are delicious. And quail know that predators know they're delicious. And so they do everything they can to hide. So in thinking about the enclosure that you want to be creating for them, you want to be giving them something that mimics where they'd want to be in the wild. That can be something with a really low profile roof, so that they feel like they're nice and woomy and cocoony, or something that has a really high aviary roof, but then some branches that they can hide, bramble that they can hide on the ground level from, or from predators and feel like they're safe. It's so interesting to think about what's humane for the animals, and what I've landed on over the years is the most humane thing for any animal is making them feel safe, allowing them clean access to food and water, keeping them away from their droppings, and if they're laying lots of eggs, in the case of poultry. If they're laying lots of eggs, that lets me know that they aren't stressed out and they feel like all of their needs are being met. So in thinking of the space for the quails, mimicking nature and then making sure that predators can't look in on them, because they can die of heart attacks so easily if a hawk is landing on, say, a tractor that you've created for them out in the field and you're moving them about in your pasture and the sun is shining on part of it. If a hawk sees them, they're going to want them because they're tasty. So if they land on there and stare in at the quail might get really scared. So you need to protect them by giving them lots of shelter and spaces where they can hide out in. If you don't have a lot of pasture to tractor them on, you could put them in a rabbit-style hutch, something that has a lower roof so they feel really safe. I say a low roof because a quail's reaction to fear or the possibility of predators being near is to jump straight up in the air like a piece of popcorn. And when they do that, if the roof is low enough, they just barely hit their heads and come down and they're okay. If the roof is like 3 to 4 feet, there's a possibility they could pop up and break their necks, which would be so devastating. If you went out and all of the quail were dead, you'd think, gosh, what happened? It might have been a neighborhood cat coming by that had scared them, or a loud noise, a chainsaw starting, things like that, and they had that reaction to hop up really quick and get away. Low profile roof or a really high aviary roof with them brambles for them to hide out in is what's ideal for them so that they can't hurt their necks. Also, sheltering them from wind and cold. They really need a wind block, because if they're feeling like they're exposed in the elements at all, they're gonna not lay eggs for you and they'll be unhappy. So giving them something with 3 sides if possible, and a roof, depending on your size and whether you have 2 or 200 quail, everyone's setup looks a little bit different. They are one of the few birds that can be totally happy in confinement and not need to be out running around in the grass. If you do let them roam, they will not come back like a chicken does. They don't have the same roosting instinct that a chicken does, where they're imprinted to the coop, they know to go in at night at dusk. Quail will just hunker down right where they are and hope nobody sees them. And to me, a bird that is being left out for predators to consume isn't a bird that's being treated as well as it can. So our ideas of what a bird should have isn't necessarily what this particular bird needs to thrive and survive. There's many different types of quail out there, different sizes and shapes. I can only speak about what I work with and what I know here on the farm, which is the jumbo coturnix, which will lay you all different interesting speckled colored eggs. And what's really fun about these speckled eggs is that the hen that lays these eggs will always lay the same-ish pattern on her eggs. This one that kind of looks like the earth, this quail will always lay these really large, exaggerated speckles on it, while this quail, for instance, lays smaller speckles on her egg, and she will always do this pattern. It's so fun to connect with your food that way and connect with animals in that way. Which bird is specifically laying what, naming that bird, thanking that bird if you're wanting to connect with them in that way. One reason why I'm so excited about connecting with Kellogg and their homesteading network is that I really feel like they're empowering all of us to understand about how to close the loops in our lives, how to be able to garden better, how to help our pollinators, how to keep bees, how to keep quail or chicken or different species of animals in your life to bring richness so that you can have everything that you need, like a victory garden, a victory farm. I feel like a lot of us have gotten away from that, but in bringing in these kind of animals into our life, we can reconnect with that, the traditions of the past that were so important, that can really be helpful for us in this day and age too. So we work with the Caturnix quail these ones are jumbo, so they'll lay a large egg. We also work with these blue egg laying quail. The texture of these eggs, I wish you could touch through the screen and feel. It's almost like they're sandpapery. It doesn't hurt the bird when they're laid, but it feels so cool. Getting to work with so many different types of eggs here on the farm, we get to really feel the smoothness of a certain breed of chicken egg versus the powderiness, and then in this case, the very smoothness of these to the kind of sandpapery texture of these. Every egg is such a delight and a treat to be able to collect each day and enjoy with your family. I find that this size of egg, the quail egg, 3 of these eggs equals 1 chicken egg, is the perfect size for little kids. Little hands to be excited about eating some protein, helping out with cooking, opening up the egg and seeing what's inside, wondering if you got a double yolker or not, if a large egg came in that day. Keeping them on the countertop is just, they're so beautiful and so inviting to eat. It's a great way to help connect kids and adults alike with their food. So we talked a little bit about what adults need to be able to feel safe in their setup. And in that setup, you always want to make sure they have access to clean water and clean food. There's many different types of feeders depending on the setup that you have. And I always like to lean on giving the animals automatic feeders, automatic waterers. So if I'm sick one day or something happens and I can't get out there, the animals are always getting the best. And that takes time and some money to invest in infrastructure, but at least you know they're always taken care of. If it's a really hot day and a person forgot to give the quail or the chickens water, that could be a really devastating situation because they could die of thirst. So you want to make sure that you're doing right by your animals and setting up all the proper infrastructure even before you get them. A lot of people get excited and they'll bring an animal home and they wonder, what kind of a setup am I going to put them in? So I always recommend getting the setups before. So 3 sides, low roof, a really high roof, and lots of brush, and making sure predators can't look in on them. Those are the tickets for adults. Let's talk about chicks. Quail chicks are so fragile and so small, and quite possibly the cutest chicks you will ever see. The little sounds they make are totally different than chicken chicks. I don't have any fresh hatchlings right now to show you, perhaps in a later video. Their legs are very small and they are very fragile. The first week of life, you have to be pretty careful when you're brooding fresh babies. I always recommend getting hatching eggs over quail chicks in the male if you can help it, because the hatching eggs are just a much safer way to transport the chicks to you, and then you can hatch them yourself and be very careful as you put them in the brooder. When we ship out quail chicks, we have to raise them up for a little while before they can go, because that first week is just such a precious time where you really have to baby them. A quail brooder is something that has a lot of space, that's what they would like, and then lots and lots of heat. I don't like those plate brooders that create heat, even though they are safer from a fire hazard perspective, because those plates make it so they all bunch underneath and they all climb on top of each other, and some can get smothered as babies. So I favor really large heat lamps. I have a really large brooder that's 10 feet long by 4 feet deep, and I can put as many as 200 quail chicks in there. And I put 4 really large heat lamps in there and turn them on, especially during the night. During the day, I'll usually keep only 1 or 2 on in that first week to keep that temperature regulated for them. If you have the ability to put an automatic thermometer in there that turns the lights on and off when the temperature hits a certain amount, that's even better. But if you don't, you can just peek in and look and see what the quail's behavior is like. This goes for chicken chicks too. If the quails are clumping up, you know they need more heat. If they're scattered about and laying really low or panting, then they need less heat. All you have to do is just open the lid on your brooder, let some fresh air in, turn off the heat lamp, and they'll be okay. So heat is number 1, and spread out heat so they're not clumping up. I like to grind up their grain that they get and make sure to put marbles or rocks in their waterers because they're so small that if they go into the waterer, sometimes they can't get out and they drown, and we don't want that to happen to your quail. So rocks in the waterers, ground up grain, lots of spread out heat, and I like to put pine shavings down. A lot of people have many different ideas about what kind of bedding or substrate to put in the brooders, but I've never had any issues with spraddle egg or chicks having uneven footing. If there's a nice big layer of pine shavings in there, they kind of bumble about, and if anything, I think that it helps their hips develop well. Some people put paper towels down, newspaper shavings and shreddings, whatever you have available. All of that makes really good compost for the garden after you're done. If you have a compost pile, you can just put it out, all that rich nitrogen from the quail. The feed that you give them depends on what you want your end game to be with the quail. So a lot of people will say, what breed do I need to raise for meat versus eggs? And the answer is, well, what you're feeding them. So these jumbo Coternics, I give them a 20% protein from the moment that they're hatched until 3 weeks of life. And then I drop it down to between 14 and 16%. And I do that so my quail don't get really large. If you want large quail and you're raising them for meat, you want to keep them at 20% plus protein feed until the time when they start laying eggs, which is between 6 and 8 weeks, which is so fast in the poultry world for a turnaround of something to hatch and then start laying eggs. It's another reason why I love quail, because they're so prolific and so rewarding. They're so quick in how they start to produce and give back to your family. That's a side note though. So if you're wanting to raise them for eggs, give them that higher protein just for the first 3 weeks of their life, and then the rest of their life, a lower protein. So it makes smaller birds, slightly smaller eggs, but lots of them. I like the jumbo Coternics with the slightly smaller eggs because they actually fit into cartons. Some of the jumbo Coternics eggs, if you give them that 20% protein all until the rest of their lives, they make some giant eggs, which is cool, but it's hard to package them to be able to use them in a practical sense. So if you can come up with some clever packaging and you want large eggs, but less of them, that's the way to achieve that. That higher protein amount also allows the quail to get larger bodies. So if you're separating your males and females, then you'd be harvesting your males between that 6 and 8 week mark, and they would be noticeably plumper and larger to be able to close that loop and make some meat for your family. A lot of people have mixed feelings about harvesting their own meat and closing that loop, and I understand that. I hear that. When we first started harvesting our male quail, we knew that we wanted to do that and raise them up because we didn't like the way larger scale factories were treating the males that were born. A lot of times they will discard of them as soon as they're born, and we wanted to be able to respect the life that we were bringing into the world. So we raised them up and knew that we were going to be eating them. And then when it came time to process them, we thought we'd hide the journey from our children. But my oldest, my 5-year-old, said, well, I want to know what you're doing. I want to see. And so my husband sat down and really went through the whole process with her and showed her, and didn't make it a dramatic affair. It was really sweet and respectful. And at the end of it, she understood where her meat came from and actually was able to connect with it in a way that felt real. Like she didn't want to waste any of what we had created. and wanted to be more aware of her consumption of it. And I feel like that's a great lesson for a child, adult, any of us to learn about what it actually takes to make meat, and to be able to bring it to a place where you can harvest it on your own and then put it in the freezer back for your family. Again, one more aspect of having a homestead. You know, what do you do with all of the excess that's created there? We don't want to throw it away or put it in the landfill. Let's use it. Quail meat is a lot more tender than adult rooster meat. Adult rooster meat of chickens would be better for tamales or slow stewing or things like that, but quail meat's actually tender. About 2 quail are a serving size for an adult, 1 for a child if you're going to be hatching at a larger scale and then having, you know, a big group of maybe 30 or 40 extra males. You know, you got to know what to do with them and plan ahead. I'm always thinking 3 and 4 steps ahead whenever I bring in quail or chickens into our space of how are we going to take care of them. Do we have the infrastructure first? What's our game plan? Do we have the ability and the space to be able to harvest them properly? Do we have the freezer space? Do we have the extra hands? All of that, I think, sets you up for success in the long run with any kind of journey on farming, quail especially. So that's just a very basic general overview of brooding quail and then what kinds of things they need as adults. And then I'm happy to connect with you all if you have any extra questions over a Q&A, or you could send extra questions to Kellogg and I'll get back to you. Hope you have a good day, and I hope that you want to bring quail into your life because I think they're really special. Oh, one more note about the sound. Quail hens just kind of chat. They're not loud like a chicken. They don't make any sounds when they lay eggs, but a quail male has a crow. It's not as loud as that, but it sounds like one of those saws that you would hear in an old-timey band being played, that like kind of warbly saw underwater. It's like a whoop, whoop, whoop. I can't even begin to do it properly because it's so unique and interesting, but whenever we have visitors come out to the farm, they'll hear that and go, whoa, like that's not a chicken, what's that sound? So it's very pleasing to the ear. Okay, that's the last bit of quail information I can give you for now. I hope you all have a good day.